One of the early attempts by the Narendra Modi government to improve what he called the ease of doing business was to promulgate an ordinance to amend certain positions, or not positions, certain provisions, I beg your pardon, once again, of an act that had come to replace a very old act, the Land Acquisition Act of 1894. Now, everybody knew that it had become obsolete, it needed amendment. So, the entire parliament, before the 2014 elections, in fact, on the last day of December, when parliament worked in 2013, it's called the LARR Act. It's the long version of it. It's a right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation, and resettlement and rehabilitation Act of 2013. The amendments fell through, actually. The amendments, some of them made sense. Our former president, New Year's Eve, he signed it. This pertained to defense. It included ports, archaeological monuments. They had a year to amend another set of rules to align these with the LARR, or the New Land Acquisition Act. But the problem that happened was that there was really clearly no political consensus. So Modi ji had to issue 3 ordinances, and eventually he gave up. He said, no, I'm not amending it. It was followed by a certain process. Acquiring land is a highly complicated process. And especially if that the land use has to be changed. And you people in Mumbai know this better than anybody else, because your real estate and land values are among the most expensive in the world if you measure it in terms of what is called purchasing power parity. Be that as it may, the land law which was sought to be amended, despite these ordinances, the government couldn't do it. Let's accept the fact that land is in short supply in this country. Just one ballpark figure which doesn't tell you the full story. India has roughly 2.5% of the total land area of the planet. Now, a much smaller proportion is cropped area, and an even smaller proportion of it is irrigated area. But here is a country with roughly 17% of the world's population living in 2.5% of the total land area. So, when this ordinance came in, you found all the problems. First was the definition of public purpose. Secondly was, how do you really compensate not just the owners of the land, but those whose livelihoods depend on that land? So you needed what was called a social impact assessment. Now, when these were sought to be tweaked, you had a problem because there was no political consensus. For instance, if you look at what are called circle rates of land, they're ridiculously low. They're typically 1/4 of the market value. So if you say, I'm going to compensate you by giving you 4 times the circle rate, you're actually giving that person the market value. So there were a whole host of issues, and then the whole issue of public purpose. What kind of hospital are you going to set up? Are you going to give free beds for the underprivileged? What kind of educational institution are you going to set up? So one can go on and on about this subject. This is a huge subject in itself. So I don't want to take more of your time, except to bring you back to the resource curse. And it's not that I'm unduly pessimistic about the state of India's political economy, but there has to be a realization that many other countries in the world, including developing countries, have done it better. They've actually been able to move out of that virtuous cycle, the vicious cycle, to a virtuous cycle. If you look at the map of India and you look at the part of India which kind of In the north, there's Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, there's Jharkhand, Bengal, Orissa, and then you go further down, it's Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, a bit of Uttar Pradesh. And this is often described as the red corridor. And if you just go by the Ministry of Home Affairs and its statistics, you'll find this is the part of India where incidents of what the government, Ministry of Home Affairs, called LWE, left-wing extremism, is at its peak. It has been, remains that. Dr. Manmohan Singh also said that, described this as India's biggest internal security threat. So far, this remains a threat, but the question that I'm raising, and it's a very general question, why are the richest lands of India? And these are not just lands which are rich in minerals. They're some of the most biodiverse parts of India. Why do they still comprise those who are the poorest, the most underprivileged? Why do the richest lands in legal terms belong to the poorest? The rich lands and the poor people. The red corridor that stretches from Pashupati in the Himalayas to Tirupati, not so far away from the Bay of Bengal. So if we are unable to learn from the mistakes of the past, if we are unable to emulate examples from different parts of the world who've done it much better than us, and everything is in the public domain, then I do believe we will end up compromising the future of our children and their grandchildren. But since it's very easy to be pessimistic, to be cynical, to believe that nothing will change, it's far more difficult to be optimistic. I would like to conclude by saying maybe Kali Yuga is here and now. Maybe the darkest hour is just before the dawn. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Few questions, but questions, not comments or anything. To just shorten the time, our chairperson has another appointment as well. So we have to listen to his comments also. So very few questions. Yes.
Can't dispute what you said, sir. Crony capitalism is well known. What about, very rapacious governments? Petrol tax is 150% on petrol. They're robbing Peter and Paul.
And they've been increasing the prices by a few paisa every day, so you don't realize it.
So at least, if I look at it holistically, and I want your comment, okay, we have this crony capitalism. At least the resources are exploited. Maybe not for the common good, but at least they are exploited to some extent. Whereas the governments, if you look at Air India and other scams of, our public taxpayers' money being wasted, that's worse, state capitalism. Your comments, sir. I
have no disagreement whatsoever in what you're saying. My friend Shri Mudit Jain, if I may take the liberty of naming you, I completely agree with you. My presentation, sir, is not about capitalism or socialism. Are we a mixed economy or a mixed up economy? Have we taken the worst of capitalism and the worst of socialism? These are matters to be discussed and debated. What is public about our public sector? If those who are in charge of those public sector organizations treat those organizations and the assets they have as their private property, as their personal zamindari. Similarly, you can say these are widely held private companies, and you might find that the promoter's share of the equity capital relatively low. So these terms, private, public, capitalism, socialism, at some point of time we have to try and maybe think beyond it. I have my distinct views on it, which may be different from yours, but I'll just give you a few examples. It used to be said that, the Nordic countries, the 5 countries of Scandinavia, they spend relatively higher proportion of their GDP on healthcare, education, infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, the social infrastructure. The tax GDP ratio is among the highest in the world, but many of those governments don't call themselves socialist. at the height of, it's going to be 10 years, not yet, it's 9.5 years, when Wall Street collapsed in 2008, and General Motors was for a while, the majority stakeholder in General Motors was the government of the United States of America. The taxpayer of the US was the big shareholder. So was General Motors that time a private company or a public company? And finally, the question I've been seeking an answer for a very long time, and I still haven't found the answer. The People's Republic of China, is it capitalist or socialist? Is it state capitalist? Is it crony capitalist? Is it a degenerated worker state? Is it, well, we can go on and on and on. Thank you, sir.
The lowering, the offering of those public sectors to companies that would lower the tariff by a few paisa. Obviously, the profit was built in because of the fact that actually the cost of that resource was going to go down to 50 paisa. How did the government prevent others who could anticipate that 50 paisa reduction and offer it to the public? How did the government kind of keep them out if they did?
I got it. But the point I'm here saying, we have regulatory mechanisms which are weak and infirm, which results in the benefits not being passed on to the consumer. And there are specific instances, and you can see this in many, many areas. I've just given you one example of electricity. We're yet to have a coal regulator in place. Just the other day, we got the Real Estate Regulatory Authority. The regulatory systems in our country, they have a lot of problems.
But in this particular instance...
I'll just complete my... So the point I'm saying is that on paper, yes, they deserve it. But the question is, could it have been done differently? Could it have been done better? That's the question I'm raising. So, for instance, these invoicings, fiddles, could it have been checked? I think yes. So it's not me. It's the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, which is the investigative wing of the Ministry of Finance. Now, it's not me, but the whole Shakti scheme, which has pointed these things out. You can go and check all the facts for yourself and find out where we're getting it wrong. So somewhere along the line, the systems of allocation and pricing of natural resources, we still have some way to go to ensure that they're not just transparent, but more in keeping with the needs of consumers. That's the limited point that I was seeking to make in this context. Yes, please.
I'm sorry to kind of repeat this question, but in this particular instance, the government set up an allegedly transparent system which would favor those who made bids which would benefit the public.
Okay. Now, if you look at the way the electricity regulatory authorities in this country are working, you will find why there have been so many occasions where the state government, the regulatory authority at the state level has been overruled by the central, and why the central regulatory authority has been overruled at the level of the Supreme Court. You have two classic cases of Gujarat, coastal Gujarat and Adani Power. The two of the biggest power plants in India, which are today broke. The Tatas are saying, we'll give you 51% of this company for 1 rupee. But you also have to take the liabilities, the huge loans that have been taken. So I'm saying, when the regulatory authority is an extension of the government, when it's not truly independent and autonomous of the government, when it has more than an arm's length distance from those who are in positions of power and authority, when the regulatory authority is headed invariably by a retired bureaucrat, very often that person has been given the job because he or she has been very pliable. Some of them, when they hold a constitutional authority, where, like the CAG's office, like the office of the Reserve Bank of India, some of them the Election Commission of India, the Central Vigilance Commission, some of those bureaucrats acquire a lot of teeth. They start roaring like lions, even if they had a reputation of being very, very meek bureaucrats. But wait. So you have taken your time setting up regulatory authorities. You haven't empowered them adequately. You put your own friends or people who are sympathetic to you as the regulators. And then you have the famous RR, the reluctant regulator. And this is an important ingredient of why we are where we are today, of which this is one part. Yes.
Indeed, one final sentence, and then I'll leave it to everybody. What I'm asking is, then, in this particular instance, when the bidding was made in this transparent way and all that, didn't at least the press pick up on the fact that the best bids had not been chosen?
No, sir, that was not the case. The best and news. I'll give you one example, all right? And since I didn't mention it, I'm mentioning it. And this is the famous Reliance Jio case. Reliance Jio acquired broadband wireless spectrum from a little-known company, headed by a gentleman who's now on the board of Reliance Industries Limited. He happens to be Mr. Mahendra Nahata. Now, the company that he owned, or his son controlled, overnight changed hands. It literally changed hands overnight. Okay? Now, that's how Reliance Jio acquired the telecom spectrum. Now, I have a little more to add to this, right? There is a bank guarantee issued to the firm which was allegedly tampered with. If you want to see a picture of the bank guarantee, I'll show it to you. There was a report drafted in the Office of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, which was excluded from the final report presented in Parliament, which grossly reduced the estimated loss to the exchequer. Okay? So, I'm stating facts for you, all right? How the system sometimes does not work, or the system is prone to manipulation or even subversion. There's a word for it. It's called regulatory capture. It happens.
Only one more question? No. Yeah. Will not be entertained? Yeah, you can meet the speaker afterwards.
मैं बैठ जाऊं? Thank you.
Thank you, Paranjoy. He has been a friend for a long time, so I was generally familiar with his argument and some data which we shared. But I must say that we have gone through, for last more than 1 hour, through a political corporate thriller, and that thriller must have either entertained you or frightened you, depending on your attitude. But apart from the airwaves and the coal and oil and gas, Maharashtra has gone one step ahead. They have sold even spirituality. In the sense that spirituality, we don't know whether spirit exists or not, but Ramdev Baba has been given by the government of Maharashtra all the marketing centers which are run by the state government. Ramdev Baba has grown from 1,064 crore rupees to 11,000 crore rupees in just a matter of 2 years, which is also the period of the BJP government in Maharashtra. So not only the airwaves and coal and oil and gas, even the spirituality can be brought under crony capitalism. Another interesting point in this context is that today we are discussing globally what Donald Trump is doing. I think he is sanctioning crony capitalism as genuine capitalism. So for that, the whole capitalism, definition of capitalism will have to be changed. Also, with what is happening allegedly in Russia, where Putin is allegedly selling everything from platinum, gold, oil, gas to the world, and manufacturing has come to a halt almost in Russia. So all the wealth that is coming to Russia is coming to this. Realizing this, there are sanctions on Russia that they cannot even sell that. That is to starve Russia of funds and capital. The point here is that we are familiar with crony capitalism, not only by these examples which are recent, but I think those who have read Godfather will know, or those who have seen the film Godfather will know, that not only the business, the capital, and the politicians, but also mafia joins in. And in fact, there is one dialogue in Godfather. The media, of course, I'm coming to media. And there's a dialogue in the Godfather when Corleone asks, how many judges are on our payroll? So we are extending the range of crony capitalism. And as Paranjoy interjected correctly, today, media is a huge partner. I'm telling you by personal experience. Media is a huge, huge partner in the crime of running crony capitalism. In fact, media is endorsing, promoting, sanctioning legal and moral authority of crony capitalism. So I think this is a very dangerous time. It depends whether you are pessimistic or optimistic. But recently what happened in the case of Kamla Mill fire was also a case of crony capitalism. The textile mill land, which was supposed to be given partly to workers, partly to traders, and partly for open spaces, has been completely usurped by the capitalists, the mill owners, and that's why Mumbai is in ruins. If you visit some of those studios, all in the one region, NDTV here, Times Now there, CNN, IBM there, TV9 here, and they're all in one small belt. That was all sold, that all land was sold, and all the skyscrapers built, India Bulls and others, but they were not asked even to provide one single element of public service, including road. So if you are caught in a traffic jam near NDTV studio, you are caught in for something like half an hour. The distance is actually 5 minutes walk. So we are familiar with crony capitalism. I just want to add one small point. Didn't our capitalism begin with crony capitalism? Wasn't East India Company a truly crony capitalist company because they were helped by the Buckingham Palace? So I think our history of economy, history of capitalism, begins with crony capitalism. So I think that wonderful corporate political thriller presented to you by Paranjoy must have enlightened you along with frightened you. Thank you very much.
I do believe that our presiding invitee has summed up what Mr. Paranjoy Guha Thakurta has treated us to for this 1 hour. I love that term, political corporate thriller, and I had no idea I was coming to watch and hear a thriller. Thank you so much for frightening us. And I hope your visit to the Asiatic Society of Mumbai is better than the one you began with in Calcutta. I think the 5 resources you listed, telecom, spectre, coal, iron ore, natural gas, and land, will require 5 more sessions, and we look forward to that. You suggested that we could trust we could trust your facts, but I think we're prepared to trust your opinions as well. I think this ends on a pessimistic note, seeing what you said. Also, I hope I can believe that this is the dark hour before the dawn. Mr. Kumar Ketkar, I think the last time we spoke, I said I was so relieved you were here because I'd been warned that you don't turn up when we expect you to turn up. I'm going to eat my words because we're seeing you here on several occasions, and I hope we will see you over and over again. Once again, our chairperson of the endowment lecture, Dr. Meena Vaishampayan, I need to congratulate you for actually managing to get Mr. Paranjoy Guha Thakurta to us. And I think we at the Asiatic will not forget this session in a hurry. I'm sure the audience feels well rewarded for their presence here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Good night.